Hey everyone! If you enjoy these story videos, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world and keeps us creating more amazing stories every week. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Sarah Mitchell, a woman etched into the comfortable, if somewhat faded, fabric of suburban life in Richmond, Virginia, was a creature of habit. Her 38 years had culminated in a routine as meticulously crafted as it was predictable. The morning rush of packing lunches, the strategic maneuvering through school drop-off lines in her trusty minivan, the seemingly endless cycle of laundry. The meticulous planning of family meals that, more often than not, ended with someone declaring they hated vegetables. Her days were a symphony of domesticity, a constant juggle between the demands of her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, a budding artist with an uncanny ability to misplace her art supplies, and her 7-year-old son, Tom, whose boundless energy was only matched by his profound love for dinosaur facts. Her husband, David, a kind, steady presence whose mind was perpetually engrossed in financial market fluctuations, offered unwavering support but was often too deep in his spreadsheets to fully appreciate the quiet heroism of her daily grind. Yet, beneath the veneer of contented motherhood, a whisper of something more, something yearning, stirred within Sarah. Her sacred ritual, her nightly escape, began precisely at 9 p.m. Once Lily and Tom were tucked in, their adolescent skirmishes temporarily quelled, Sarah would retreat to the worn comfort of her living room sofa. With a steaming mug of herbal tea, a small rebellion against the endless juice boxes and milk spills of her day, she would surrender to the allure of NCIS. This wasn't just a TV show, it was a window into another life, a different kind of woman. Her gaze would inevitably lock onto Emily Wickersham, the actress who embodied Agent Ellie Bishop. Emily, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, her sharp, intelligent eyes, and her ability to deliver complex lines with an effortless grace that belied the meticulous effort, was Sarah's aspirational alter ego. On screen, Emily was always poised, always powerful, always in control. She navigated high-stakes scenarios with an almost supernatural calm, her tailored suits impeccable, her wit sharper than any suspect's defense. She just glides through life, doesn't she, David? Sarah would often murmur, a sigh escaping her lips as she watched Emily disarm a bomb or outsmart a criminal mastermind. Beautiful, successful, respected, and always impeccably dressed. No sticky fingers, no burnt toast, no frantic searches for lost soccer cleats. Just one day, that's all I'd ask for. One single day, living her life. David, engrossed in an article about cryptocurrency, would offer a non-committal grunt, lost in his own world, utterly oblivious to the quiet yearning unfurling beside him. 3,000 miles away, nestled precariously on a cliff overlooking the vast, glittering expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Emily Wickersham was living the life Sarah Mitchell so fervently envied. At 36, Emily was a household name, her face gracing magazine covers, her every move scrutinized by an insatiable public. Her expansive, minimalist Malibu mansion was a testament to her success, a shrine to clean lines and expensive art, but it felt less like a home and more like a beautifully curated museum where she was the sole, often lonely, exhibit. The relentless pace of Hollywood had begun to fray at her edges. Every early morning call time for a 14-hour shoot, every grueling session with her personal trainer, every meticulously planned public appearance, every forced smile for the cameras, every bland platitude delivered in interviews, it was all a performance. A relentless cycle that left her feeling like a hollowed-out version of herself. The pressure was immense. Maintaining her physique, remembering reams of dialogue, navigating the treacherous currents of studio politics, enduring the constant barrage of tabloid speculation about her personal life, and a new scandal seemed to erupt weekly, fabricated from a misinterpreted glance or a strategically angled photograph. Her last serious relationship had dissolved under the intense media glare, leaving her with a lingering bitterness and a deep-seated distrust of intimacy. She longed for genuine connection, for a moment where she wasn't Emily Wickersham, the IT girl, the glamorous actress, but simply Emily, a woman who sometimes felt utterly lost. Tonight, after a particularly brutal day on set involving a complicated stunt sequence and a subsequent dressing down from a notoriously difficult director, she had retreated to the cool, sterile comfort of her home. A quick glance at her phone confirmed her worst fears. A new headline blared: "Wickersham's diva demands grind production to halt." It was a lie, a vicious distortion of a moment of creative frustration, but it would stick. She sank onto her custom-made, cloud-soft sofa, a half-eaten, exquisitely plated vegan meal untouched on the glass coffee table before her. Scrolling through social media, she saw countless fan accounts dissecting her latest red carpet gown, her latest interview quote, her latest perceived flaw. But amidst the noise, a different kind of post caught her eye, a heartwarming image of a seemingly ordinary family laughing around a kitchen table, stained with flour and beaming with genuine joy. The caption read, "Family baking night. Sometimes the simplest moments are the best." A wave of profound longing washed over her. No paparazzi, no agents, no publicists, no expectations. Just real life. "God, I just want a normal life," she whispered to the cavernous, echoing silence of her living room, her voice cracking with an exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue. Just one day without the cameras, the publicists, the relentless pressure, the endless noise. Just one day of quiet, of anonymity, of ordinary. She closed her eyes, a single, perfectly formed tear tracing a path down her cheek, leaving a glistening trail against her flawless, camera-ready skin. If only I could have her life, just for a day. Just one day to be someone else. As if the universe itself had been holding its breath, poised to grant these disparate desires, a peculiar atmospheric phenomenon began to brew. A freak electrical storm, an unseasonal and intensely powerful meteorological event, was sweeping with uncanny synchronicity across both the East and West coasts. In Richmond, Virginia, as Sarah finally drifted off to sleep, her mind a quiet jumble of grocery lists and Emily Wickersham's latest on-screen triumph, a brilliant, almost blinding flash of lightning illuminated her modest bedroom. The subsequent thunderclap was so violent it rattled the very foundations of her house, causing a framed family photo to tilt precariously on her bedside table. Simultaneously, in Malibu, California, another bolt, impossibly vivid and charged with an otherworldly energy, struck with terrifying proximity to Emily's cliffside mansion. The surge of power momentarily plunged the entire property into an eerie darkness before the sophisticated backup generators kicked in, restoring the artificial glow. Neither woman registered the strange concurrence beyond a jolt of startled awareness, a fleeting moment of primal fear. They both fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, their unconscious wishes, whispered into the void of their separate existences, now poised to collide in the most unexpected way. The stage was set, the cosmic dice had been cast, and an extraordinary morning was about to dawn. The next day, Sarah Mitchell woke with a disoriented gasp, not to the familiar, comforting chirping of robins outside her Virginia bedroom window, nor to the persistent, insistent demands of her children for breakfast, but to a profound, almost luxurious silence, broken only by the barely perceptible hum of an unfamiliar, high-tech air conditioning system. Her eyelids fluttered open, her eyes struggling to adjust to the blinding, unfiltered sunlight that streamed through a set of immense, floor-to-ceiling windows. This wasn't her sensible, floral-patterned duvet, lovingly chosen during a clearance sale. It was silk, cool and impossibly smooth against her skin, a color she could only describe as Hollywood platinum. She sat up abruptly, her mind still in a fog of suburban dreams, and her jaw dropped. The room was vast, an expanse of sleek, minimalist design in shades of cream, charcoal, and polished chrome. Abstract art, which she vaguely recognized from a magazine feature, adorned the towering walls. A massive, high-definition television, built seamlessly into one wall, shimmered like a silent black monolith. Through an open doorway, She glimpsed a dressing room, a sprawling sanctuary of designer clothes and glittering accessories that was easily larger than her entire master bedroom back home. "What in the actual world?" she mumbled, her voice sounding oddly unfamiliar, deeper, more resonant, less Sarah. She swung her legs out of the impossibly soft bed, and as her bare feet touched the plush, deep pile rug, she noted with a growing sense of panic that they were longer, leaner, and topped with perfectly pedicured toes, painted in a shade of sophisticated nude that she would never have considered. She walked towards the bathroom, her reflection in a full-length mirror catching her peripheral vision. She stopped dead. Staring back was not Sarah Mitchell, the 38-year-old mother from Richmond, with her practical bob and comfortable clothes. Staring back was Emily Wickersham, the glamorous actress. Emily Wickersham's striking blonde hair, her piercing blue eyes, her sculpted cheekbones, her famously athletic physique, currently clad in an equally famous silk negligee. Sarah let out a shriek so pure, so high-pitched, it echoed through the enormous, silent house, a sound that she barely recognized as her own. She slapped a hand over her mouth, her new hands, and stared, her heart thumping against her ribs like a trapped bird. This wasn't a dream. This was impossible. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, under a sky that was a familiar, comforting Virginia blue, Emily Wickersham awoke with a jolt, not to the discreet chime of her personal assistant's wake-up call, but to the insistent, shrill cry of a child from what sounded like the very next room. Her eyes fluttered open to a decidedly unfashionable floral wallpaper, a riot of faded roses and ivy, and a clutter of half-read children's books piled haphazardly on a worn wooden nightstand. The quilt covering her was soft, but distinctly un-designer, clearly well-loved and well-used. This was emphatically not her minimalist Malibu sanctuary. The pervasive smell of pancakes, faintly burned and undeniably homemade, wafted tantalizingly from downstairs, mixed with the distinct aroma of brewing coffee. She sat up, feeling a strange heaviness in her limbs, a lack of her usual athletic grace. Her muscles, usually taut and toned from daily Pilates and celebrity trainer sessions, felt softer, more relaxed. She looked down at her hands, shorter fingers, no designer manicure, a faint, almost imperceptible scar on her left knuckle she didn't recognize. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at her. She scrambled out of bed, her bare feet meeting a rather lumpy rug, and nearly tripped over a discarded toy truck, painted bright yellow, which lay innocently in her path. She stumbled towards the small, en-suite bathroom, her heart beginning to pound with a frantic rhythm. Her reflection in the rather modest mirror above the sink confirmed her worst, most outlandish fears. Staring back was a woman with kind, tired eyes, a scattering of faint laugh lines around them, a few silver strands peeking defiantly through her otherwise mousy brown hair, and a face that, while pleasant and undeniably warm, was utterly, completely, irrevocably ordinary. It was Sarah Mitchell. Just then, a small, sleepy voice, accompanied by the distinct patter of small feet, piped up from the doorway. "Mommy, are you okay? Lily said you were making weird noises again. Are you dreaming about that scary monster under the bed?" Emily stared at the little girl, a sweet, gap-toothed creature with sleepy eyes, then back at her reflection, and the full, horrifying, bewildering reality crashed over her like a tidal wave. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice a complete stranger to her own ears, softer, higher, completely devoid of its usual husky, sophisticated cadence. "Oh, my God." The small girl, Tom, now fully awake, simply stared, a half-chewed piece of cereal clinging to his lower lip. "Mommy, your voice sounds funny. Did you swallow a frog?" Emily could only stare, utterly speechless, as the new, terrifying, and utterly bewildering reality of her situation began to sink in. Her perfectly curated world had just been irrevocably flipped upside down, replaced by a life she only knew from distant whispers and fleeting wishes. Sarah, trapped in Emily Wickersham's impossibly chic Malibu bedroom, felt the initial surge of pure, unadulterated panic slowly give way to a creeping, nauseating dread. This wasn't a dream. Her reflection, Emily's reflection, blinked back at her, wide-eyed and terrified. She pinched herself hard on the arm, Emily's arm, and felt a sharp sting. "This is real," she whispered, the words sounding alien in Emily's resonant voice. "Oh my God, this is real." A sudden, shrill ringing pierced the luxurious silence. She fumbled for the source, discovering a sleek, minimalist phone on the bedside table. The caller ID flashed Brenda, agent. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. An agent? Emily had an agent. This was serious. Taking a shaky breath, she answered, trying to mimic the calm, collected Emily she knew from TV. "Hello, Emily. Finally. What are you doing? You're going to be late." Brenda's voice, sharp and efficient, crackled through the phone. "Remember? Today's the cover shoot for A-List Living magazine, then the NCIS table read, followed by that charity luncheon interview. And don't forget the fitting for the Golden Globes dress this afternoon. You're supposed to be at the studio in 30 minutes. Your driver's waiting." Sarah's mind reeled. Cover shoot? Table read? Golden Globes dress? Her daily schedule usually involved school lunches and PTA meetings. She stammered, yes, Brenda. Just got a little sidetracked. Be right there." She hung up, her hand trembling. Sidetracked, she muttered to her reflection. "I'm in a different body in a different state. This is more than sidetracked." A frantic search through the gargantuan dressing room revealed rows upon rows of designer clothes, gowns shimmering with sequins, impeccably tailored blazers, shoes with heels that defied gravity. Nothing looked remotely comfortable or, more importantly, like her. She finally settled on what appeared to be the most casual outfit, a pair of designer jeans, a silk blouse, and surprisingly practical, for Hollywood, ankle boots. As she descended the grand staircase, a sleek, black car, long and intimidating, idled in the driveway. A stern-faced man in a suit, presumably the driver, opened the door. "Good morning, Ms. Wickersham." Sarah swallowed hard. This was it. Her immersion into the dizzying, bewildering world of Emily Wickersham had begun. The cover shoot was a whirlwind of flashing lights, demanding photographers and stylists who descended upon her like a flock of well-dressed vultures, adjusting her hair, touching up her makeup, and contorting her into poses that felt utterly unnatural. "Arch your back more, Emily. Give us fierce. Now, playful. Work it," the photographer bellowed. Sarah felt like a deer in headlights, stiff and awkward. She kept giggling nervously, which the photographer, surprisingly, adored. Yes, that uninhibited laugh. So authentic. We love it. Sarah just prayed she wouldn't trip over the impossibly high heels. Next came the NCIS table read. Sitting beside actual famous actors, Sarah felt a cold sweat break out. She held the script upside down for a full minute before realizing her mistake. When it was her turn to deliver Agent Bishop's lines, sharp, analytical, full of complex FBI jargon, Sarah stumbled, mispronounced words, and completely forgot her character's current emotional arc. The director, a portly man with a perpetually stressed expression, looked bewildered. "Emily, darling, are you feeling quite all right?" That was an interesting interpretation. Bishop is usually a bit more grounded. But one of her co-stars, a seasoned actor with a twinkle in his eye, leaned over and whispered, "Don't worry, Em. It's a fresh take. I kind of dig the disoriented but determined vibe. Very method." Sarah just offered a weak smile, wishing desperately she could be back home, making a sensible meatloaf. The ultimate test came later, when Brenda, her agent, thrust her phone into Sarah's hand. "Emily, live stream. Quick, hello to your fans. They love your candid moments." Sarah's eyes widened. She had only ever watched live streams, never been on one. As the camera went live, she stared into her own reflection, Emily's reflection, and felt a surge of homesickness so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Oh, hi everyone," she began, her voice trembling slightly. It's been a day. Honestly, sometimes I just wish I could be home, in my kitchen, making a big pot of lentil soup. My kids always loved my lentil soup. She trailed off, realizing she was talking about her kids, not Emily's, who, she vaguely recalled, Emily didn't have. Brenda snatched the phone away, her face aghast. Emily, what was that? But it was too late. The comments were already flooding in. Emily Wickersham wants to quit Hollywood for soup? Is Emily having a breakdown? The star is tired of fame. Sarah just blinked, completely oblivious to the media storm she had just unwittingly unleashed. Meanwhile, in the bustling, lived-in chaos of Sarah Mitchell's Virginia home, Emily Wickersham was having a breakdown of an entirely different kind. She stood in the kitchen, staring at a scorched frying pan and a sad, blackened lump that was supposed to be a pancake. "How hard can it be?" she muttered, the foreign voice of Sarah sounding oddly defeated. "It's just flour and eggs." The smell of burnt breakfast mingled with the faint aroma of stale coffee and unemptied trash, a symphony of domesticity that assaulted her perfectly honed senses. Her personal chef in Malibu prepared raw vegan meals that looked like works of art, not charred sacrifices. "Mommy, my toast is cold." Tom's impatient voice cut through her daze. Lily added, "And I can't find my pink glitter glue. I need it for school." Emily, still reeling from the shock of her new body and surroundings, felt a wave of nausea. Kids. 2 of them. And they needed glitter glue and warm toast. This was not in her contract. She fumbled with the antiquated toaster, nearly setting off the smoke alarm. David, Sarah's husband, walked in, impeccably dressed for work, a serene smile on his face. "Morning, honey. Smells like you're experimenting with breakfast. Don't worry, burnt pancakes build character." He gave her a quick peck on the cheek, a gesture so intimately casual it sent a jolt of unfamiliar warmth through Emily. "Kids ready for school?" "Sarah, darling, the laundry's still in the machine, and don't forget the parent-teacher conference for Tom at 3. And please remember to top up the gas in the minivan. I'm running on fumes." He was out the door before Emily could even stammer a response. The minivan. Oh, the minivan. Emily, who was chauffeured everywhere in a luxury SUV with tinted windows, stared at the beige behemoth in the driveway with utter dismay. It was scuffed, covered in mysterious stains, and smelled vaguely of old juice boxes. Driving was something she rarely did, and certainly not a vehicle this unglamorous. Her first attempt to back out of the driveway resulted in a near collision with a neighbor's prize-winning rose bush. The school drop-off was a nightmare. She took a wrong turn, got stuck in a line for the high school instead of elementary, and ended up causing a minor traffic jam while trying to execute a clumsy 3-point turn. Horns blared. Other mothers glared. Emily, the composed star, felt her face flush with humiliation. "This is a nightmare," she hissed under her breath. Back home, the laundry machine became her nemesis. Sarah's notes, written in neat, familiar handwriting on a whiteboard, said darks on cold, delicates hang dry, Tom's soccer uniform pre-soak. Emily stared at the dizzying array of buttons and dials. Pre-soak? What is a pre-soak? She ended up shrinking Tom's favorite superhero t-shirt to doll-size proportions and turning Lily's white ballet leotard a faint shade of gray. The parent-teacher conference was no less disastrous. She tried to bluff her way through, using vague, polite phrases, but when Tom's teacher asked about his specific reading level and his struggles with multiplication, Emily could only offer a blank stare. "I'm sure he's very creative," she offered weakly. The teacher looked skeptical. But amidst the unending series of humiliations and frustrations, something subtle began to shift. Later that afternoon, after a tearful Lily confessed to Emily, in Sarah's body, that she felt lonely because she hadn't made any new friends at school, Emily felt a pang, not of annoyance, but of genuine concern. She found herself sitting on the floor of Lily's room, helping her untangle yarn for a friendship bracelet, something she would never, in her wildest dreams, have done in her own life. Lily, sensing a new, softer side to her mom, leaned her head against Emily's shoulder. Emily stiffened at first, unused to such uninhibited affection, but then, slowly, tentatively, she put an arm around the small girl. The warmth, the simple, uncomplicated act of comfort, was surprisingly nice. And when Tom came home from school, excitedly recounting a playground adventure, throwing his arms around her for a spontaneous hug, Emily found herself hugging him back, truly hugging him, feeling the small, sturdy body press against her. The noise, the mess, the endless demands, they were still overwhelming, but in those small moments, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine connection. It was a strange, bewildering, utterly unglamorous feeling, but it was real. And as she looked around the cozy, slightly messy living room, filled with family photos and children's drawings, a strange thought occurred to her. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel utterly alone. The live stream incident with Sarah as Emily, wistfully lamenting her desire for lentil soup and the comforts of home, had exploded across the internet. Emily Wickersham's existential crisis, Hollywood burnout or clever PR stunt, screamed headlines. Brenda, Emily's agent, was apoplectic. Her phone had been ringing off the hook with concerned studio executives, opportunistic journalists, and even a few celebrity wellness gurus offering spiritual retreats. "Emily, what were you thinking?" Brenda had shrieked over the phone, her voice barely containing its hysteria. "You sounded like you were about to join a commune. We've had to issue 5 different statements just to calm the storm." Sarah, still processing the sheer magnitude of her predicament, could only offer a mumbled apology. I just missed my kids," she'd confessed quietly, instantly regretting it. Brenda had sputtered, "What now?" "Emily, darling, you don't have kids." The conversation had ended with Brenda declaring an emergency damage control plan. Sarah, as Emily, was to attend the highly anticipated Hollywood Humanitarian Gala tonight, a star-studded event televised nationally, and deliver a heartfelt, carefully vetted speech about her dedication to her craft and her latest charitable endeavors. "You need to show them you're still the glamorous, committed star they know and love," Brenda had emphasized, her tone leaving no room for argument. Sarah's stomach churned. A red carpet? A gala? A speech? The most public speaking she had done in years was presenting a casserole at the PDA bake sale. Now she was expected to transform into a dazzling, articulate Hollywood icon. She spent the entire afternoon in a state of growing dread, enduring another session with a team of stylists, makeup artists, and hairdressers. They meticulously sculpted Emily's hair into an elegant chignon, painted her face with products Sarah couldn't even name, and squeezed her into a breathtaking, but painfully tight, emerald green gown that shimmered with thousands of sequins. "Remember, Emily," Brenda had drilled into her, "smile, wave, no talk of soup, and stick to the script." Brenda pressed a small card into her hand, filled with bullet points for her acceptance speech. Stepping onto the red carpet was an assault on Sarah's senses. Flashbulbs exploded like constant fireworks, blinding her. A cacophony of shouts erupted from dozens of reporters, all yelling Emily's name, demanding her attention. "Emily, over here. Who are you wearing, Emily? Emily, what's your take on the latest political scandal?" Sarah, overwhelmed, gripped Brenda's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the agent's flesh. She managed a terrified, deer-in-headlights smile, waving vaguely at the throng. She felt utterly ridiculous, a fraud in an impossibly expensive dress. This wasn't glamour, it was a high-pressure performance with no script, no stage directions, and no escape. Inside the opulent ballroom, Sarah found herself seated at a table with a famous director, a notorious producer, and a supermodel whose bone structure seemed to defy human anatomy. Small talk, which Sarah usually excelled at in the context of playdates and neighborhood gatherings, proved impossible. She tried to discuss the weather, only to be met with blank stares. She attempted a witty comment about the hors d'oeuvres, and it fell flat. She yearned for David, for the comfortable rhythm of their easy conversation, for someone who knew her, the real her. Then came the moment of truth. Brenda nudged her forward as Emily Wickersham's name was called to the stage to accept an Excellence in Philanthropy award for her work with a children's literacy charity, a charity Sarah had no idea Emily even supported. Heart-pounding, Sarah ascended the steps, the blinding stage lights making her dizzy. She clutched the heavy, engraved award and glanced at Brenda, who was mouthing script from the front row. Sarah looked down at the note card, the bullet points blurring before her eyes. Acknowledge achievement, dedication to cause, passion for giving back. But the words felt hollow and sincere. Instead, a different kind of speech welled up from deep within her, a heartfelt, honest outpouring from Sarah's own soul, filtered through Emily's famous voice. "Thank you," she began, her voice shaking slightly at first, then gaining strength. "This is unexpected. I'm standing here under these lights and I'm supposed to say all the right things. But honestly, for the past few days, I've felt incredibly lost. I've realized how easy it is to chase after what we think we want, what we think will make us happy, the fame, the glamour, the accolades." She paused, scanning the sea of famous faces, many of whom looked surprised, some intrigued. "But what I've learned more than ever is the profound value of connection, of genuine relationships, of the quiet moments of joy found not in flashing lights, but in a child's hug, in a shared meal, in simply being seen for who you truly are, not for who you pretend to be on a screen." A hush fell over the room. Sarah's voice, imbued with raw, unvarnished emotion, resonated. "Sometimes," she continued, her eyes misting slightly, "we forget that the greatest philanthropic act isn't just writing a check, it's investing in the people around us. It's nurturing our families, our communities, and finding purpose in the everyday. I've been incredibly lonely lately, despite being surrounded by so many people. And I'm starting to understand that true richness isn't measured in box office numbers or magazine covers, but in the love you give and receive." She ended with a simple, profound statement: "Thank you for this award, but more importantly, thank you for reminding me what truly matters." "It's time I went home and made some lentil soup." The final sentence, a callback to her viral live stream, drew a collective gasp from the audience, followed by a ripple of stunned, then empathetic applause. Many celebrities in the room, weary of their own gilded cages, felt a surprising resonance with her words. Tears welled in the eyes of several hardened industry veterans. Brenda, in the front row, had initially looked like she was about to spontaneously combust, but as Sarah spoke, even her steely gaze softened. By the time Sarah descended the stage, the applause was thunderous, a standing ovation. Reporters were already frantically typing on their phones. Emily Wickersham's authentic confession, Hollywood star's honest plea for simplicity, the most real moment in gala history. Sarah, bewildered but strangely lighter, knew she had just derailed Emily's carefully crafted public image, but in doing so, she had spoken a truth that resonated far beyond the velvet ropes of Hollywood. Meanwhile, in the warm, slightly chaotic embrace of Sarah Mitchell's Virginia home, Emily, as Sarah, was discovering the unexpected joys of domesticity. The initial terror of burnt pancakes and bewildering laundry cycles had given way to a stubborn determination. If she could master complex fight choreography and intricate dialogue, she could certainly conquer a washing machine. She spent hours online, watching YouTube tutorials on everything from stain removal to basic vehicle maintenance for minivans. She discovered a surprising satisfaction in seeing Lily's ballet leotard emerge pristine from the wash, or successfully getting a stubborn stain out of Tom's soccer jersey. The greatest revelation, however, came in the kitchen. David, sensing Sarah's, Emily's, unusual struggles with cooking, had left a stack of simple recipe cards. Emily, who hadn't cooked a meal in years, gingerly followed the instructions for a basic spaghetti carbonara. To her astonishment, it turned out edible. Then, even better, it turned out delicious. The appreciative groans from Lily and Tom as they devoured her creation were a symphony she had never before heard. "Mommy, this is even better than usual," Tom declared, his face smeared with sauce. Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the heat of the stove. It was the warmth of appreciation, of having created something tangible and satisfying for others. The following day, Tom's birthday loomed. Sarah's, now Emily's, notes on the calendar indicated a small party with a few friends and a homemade cake. Emily, who typically hired event planners for lavish celebrity gatherings, found herself daunted. But then, she remembered the joy on Tom's face from the carbonara. She decided to go all in. She baked a dinosaur-shaped cake, following a recipe Sarah had scribbled on a napkin, meticulously frosting it with green scales and googly eyes. It was messy, imperfect, and utterly charming. She strung up colorful streamers, blew up balloons, and organized a scavenger hunt for a hidden treasure chest of candy. When Tom's friends arrived, the house erupted into a joyous cacophony of shouts and laughter. Emily, initially awkward, soon found herself caught up in the energy. She laughed genuinely as Tom enthusiastically explained the difference between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Velociraptor, her own famous voice forgotten in the pure joy of the moment. She helped Lily organize a craft station where the children made dinosaur masks, patiently untangling sticky tape and glitter glue. When it was time for the cake, and everyone sang "Happy Birthday," Tom beamed at her, his eyes shining with pure, unadulterated love. "This is the best birthday ever, Mommy," he declared, throwing his arms around her for a powerful, spontaneous hug. For the first time in years, Emily felt a joy that wasn't tied to accolades, box office numbers, or public approval. It was a simpler, deeper, more profound happiness. It was the feeling of being loved for simply being, not for being Emily Wickersham, the star, but for being Mommy, the woman who made burnt pancakes and amazing dinosaur cakes. She looked at David, who was smiling at her with a gentle, loving warmth, then at Lily and Tom, their faces alight with uninhibited happiness. She realized that in this ordinary, messy, beautiful life, she was experiencing genuine connection, genuine warmth, and a sense of belonging that her opulent, solitary mansion had never provided. This wasn't the life she had wished for, but it was giving her something she hadn't even known she was missing. The aftermath of Sarah's impromptu speech at the Hollywood Humanitarian Gala was nothing short of a media earthquake. The footage of Emily Wickersham, known for her poised, often guarded public persona, breaking down on stage and speaking so genuinely about loneliness and the value of simple family connections, had gone viral instantaneously. News channels replayed the moment on a loop, analysts dissected every word, and social media exploded with hashtags like #RealEmily and #LentilSoupRevolution. Celebrities, typically guarded, began posting their own confessions of feeling overwhelmed and lonely, sparking a broader conversation about mental health in Hollywood. Brenda, Emily's agent, had initially been furious, but the sheer volume of positive feedback had forced a strategic pivot. "Emily, you're a genius," she'd shrieked, her voice now brimming with a mixture of shock and exhilaration. "We've got calls from Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, The View, Good Morning America. Everyone wants to hear Emily Wickersham's story of rediscovering her authentic self. You're more popular than ever. Just no more soup comments, okay? Unless it's a paid endorsement." Sarah, still reeling from the experience, found herself thrust into a dizzying round of high-profile interviews. She sat on plush studio couches under blinding lights, answering questions about her epiphany and her journey to self-acceptance. She had to constantly invent nuanced answers, drawing from her own experiences as Sarah Mitchell, carefully couching them in terms that sounded plausible for Emily Wickersham. When asked about her charitable work, she spoke passionately about the importance of literacy and accessible education, genuinely pulling from her own PTA volunteer days and Lily's struggles with reading in kindergarten, making it sound as though Emily had been deeply involved in these causes for years. The interviewers, captivated by this new, vulnerable Emily, hailed her as a breath of fresh air, a Hollywood star finally embracing her true self. Sarah found herself becoming surprisingly adept at channeling Emily's outward confidence, even as she felt like an imposter. The constant pressure to perform, however, was exhausting. She missed the quiet anonymity of her old life, the ability to simply be without every word being analyzed, every gesture scrutinized. One afternoon, during a lull between interviews, Sarah, as Emily, scrolled through Emily's phone, a device she still barely understood. She stumbled upon an old text message chain from Emily's sister, Chloe, mentioning a planned visit. "Chloe's coming?" Sarah gasped aloud. Emily hadn't mentioned a sister. Brenda, overhearing, breezed in. Oh yes, Emily. Your sister Chloe is flying in tomorrow. She always stays at your place for a week, helps with your schedule, tries to get you to eat actual food. Bit of a busybody, but good for you, darling. Helps you stay grounded. Sarah's heart sank. She could bluff her way through an interview, but faking a lifelong sibling relationship? That was a whole new level of impossible. She remembered Emily talking about how Chloe was often critical, always pushing her to be more or better. This was going to be an emotional minefield. She braced herself for an awkward reunion, knowing she had to somehow convince Chloe that she was her sister, despite feeling like a stranger in her own skin. The prospect of facing Emily's past, embodied by her own sister, was more terrifying than any red carpet. Back in Virginia, Emily, as Sarah, was also facing an unexpected, if far less glamorous, form of public attention. Her culinary experiments, born of necessity and a surprising newfound passion, had begun to turn heads. After the success of Tom's birthday cake and the spaghetti carbonara, David had suggested she try making some of Sarah's famous homemade strawberry jam, a local legend in their neighborhood. Emily, armed with a recipe card and a YouTube tutorial, spent an entire afternoon meticulously hulling strawberries, sterilizing jars, and stirring the bubbling, fragrant mixture on the stove. The result was a batch of vibrant, perfectly set jam that tasted of pure summer. David, ever the pragmatist, was impressed. Honey, this is incredible. You should make more. You know how Mrs. Henderson down the street always begs for a jar. Encouraged, Emily made another batch. And another. Soon, the kitchen island was laden with glistening jars of strawberry, blueberry, and peach jam. When David took a few jars to his office, his colleagues raved. Sarah's jam became an instant hit. Word spread quickly through their close-knit Virginia neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson didn't just beg for a jar, she offered to buy a dozen. Soon, Emily found herself taking orders from neighbors, friends, and even people from Lily's school. She started a small online page, Sarah's Sweet Spreads, and to her astonishment, orders began trickling in from beyond their immediate community. The actress who once considered making toast an elaborate culinary feat was now a fledgling artisanal jam maker. The physical demands of her new life, coupled with her newfound hobby, were also having a profound effect on Emily. Sarah's body, while initially feeling heavy and unfamiliar, was gradually becoming her own. The daily walks to school with the kids, the constant bending and lifting, the hours spent stirring pots of jam, it was a different kind of workout than her Pilates and gym sessions, but it was surprisingly effective. She felt stronger, more grounded. The fatigue that had plagued Emily Wickersham, a mental weariness from constant performance, was slowly replaced by a physical tiredness that felt honest and earned. And in the process of making jam, of creating something with her own hands, she found a therapeutic rhythm. The sweet scent of fruit simmering, the satisfying pop of a sealed jar, it was a sensory experience far removed from the sterile glamour of Hollywood and deeply, unexpectedly satisfying. One sunny afternoon, as Emily was labeling a fresh batch of raspberry jam, her phone, Sarah's old, slightly cracked smartphone, buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. Hello. A cheerful voice on the other end said, Hi, is this Sarah Mitchell? This is Brenda Maxwell from Richmond Local Eats magazine. We've been hearing rave reviews about your homemade jams. We'd love to do a feature on Sarah's Sweet Spreads, the story behind the local legend. Would you be available for an interview and a photo shoot next week? Emily nearly dropped the phone. A photo shoot? An interview? For jam? Emily Wickersham, the subject of countless glamorous magazine covers, was now being sought out by a local food magazine for her artisanal spreads. A wry, almost amused smile touched her lips. This was a different kind of fame, a quieter, sweeter kind, born not of manufactured image but of genuine craft. It was utterly ridiculous, completely unexpected, and strangely, profoundly appealing. She agreed, feeling a surge of excitement. This was her chance to shine, not as Emily Wickersham, but as Sarah, the jam maker, The mother, the woman who had found her own kind of sweetness in the everyday. She felt a connection to this Sarah that was growing stronger with each passing day. The life she had wished for was fading, replaced by the unexpected richness of the one she now inhabited. The arrival of Chloe, Emily Wickersham's older sister, sent a fresh wave of panic through Sarah. Chloe, a high-powered corporate lawyer from New York, arrived with an air of efficiency and a meticulously planned itinerary for Emily's wellness week. She was a striking woman, her sharp intelligence radiating from her perfectly coiffed dark hair and piercing green eyes, eyes that held a lifetime of shared history with Emily, a history Sarah couldn't possibly fake. You look different," Chloe observed almost immediately, her gaze sharp as she sized Sarah up on the doorstep of the Malibu mansion. "A little softer. Less wound up somehow. What's with the hair? And you're wearing flats?" Sarah, clad in comfortable, though still designer, loafers, managed a weak smile. "Just embracing a more grounded aesthetic, Chloe. You know, self-discovery and all that." Chloe raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Right. Well, grounded usually translates to Emily's having a meltdown. Don't tell me this is about that ridiculous lentil soup livestream." Sarah's heart sank. The week became an elaborate performance for Sarah. Chloe, convinced Emily was on the verge of a breakdown or a public scandal, subjected her to intense scrutiny. She questioned Sarah relentlessly about their shared childhood memories, their inside jokes, and past family dramas. Sarah, scrambling, had to invent plausible answers, drawing on vague recollections of interviews Emily had given or snippets of information Brenda had let slip. When Chloe recounted a vivid memory of them sneaking out to a high school party, Sarah could only nod vaguely, pretending to remember. Chloe, noticing the hesitation, eyed her suspiciously. "You always were a terrible liar, Em. What's going on?" The constant pressure to maintain the facade was exhausting. Sarah found herself longing for the simpler challenges of Hollywood, the red carpet, the interviews, even the table reads. At least there, she was playing a character with a script. Here, she was improvising a lifelong relationship. One evening, Chloe brought up their late grandmother, a beloved figure who had clearly been central to their lives. Chloe spoke of their grandmother's unique baking quirks, her habit of always humming specific lullabies, and a secret hiding spot for candy in her old house. As Chloe shared these intimate details, her voice thick with emotion, Sarah felt a profound pang of guilt. She was not Emily. She was trespassing on sacred family ground. Chloe, sensing Sarah's emotional distance, finally confronted her. You're not yourself. You're quiet, you're vague, you're acting like you don't even know half the things we're talking about. What did that soup livestream really mean? Are you secretly in love with a civilian? Are you joining a cult?" Sarah, on the verge of tears, almost confessed everything. But the thought of the chaos it would unleash, the impossibility of being believed, held her back. She simply shook her head, offering a choked, "I'm just going through a lot, Chloe. I need time." Chloe, though still skeptical, softened slightly, seeing the genuine distress in Emily's, Sarah's eyes. "All right, just don't disappear on me, okay? You're my sister. I worry about you." The unexpected warmth of Chloe's concern, even directed at Emily, touched Sarah deeply. She realized that beneath the Hollywood glitter, Emily had a fiercely loving sister who cared deeply for her. It was a revelation that humanized Emily in a way Sarah hadn't expected. In the midst of this personal turmoil, Brenda called with exciting news. The lentil soup speech had generated so much buzz that a major network was offering Emily a deal for a reality show, Emily Unscripted, Finding My True Self. It would follow her journey of rediscovery, perhaps even show her making lentil soup. Sarah, horrified, vehemently refused. "No. Absolutely not. I am not doing a reality show." Brenda was flabbergasted. "Emily, this is a multi-million-dollar offer. Think of the exposure. You could rebrand yourself as the authentic Hollywood star." But Sarah, overwhelmed by the constant performance, found a surprising strength to say no. She realized she couldn't keep living this lie, especially not with cameras following her every move. She needed to find a way back to her own life, her own family. The glamorous dream was rapidly becoming a suffocating nightmare. Meanwhile, in the comfortable, familiar rhythms of Sarah Mitchell's Virginia home, Emily, as Sarah, was enjoying a period of unexpected peace and fulfillment. The article in Richmond Local Eats magazine had been a huge success, featuring a charming photo of Emily, as Sarah, surrounded by her jars of jam, a wide, genuine smile on her face. Orders for Sarah's sweet spreads were pouring in, not just from the neighborhood, but from local cafes and specialty food stores. Emily, the former actress who meticulously avoided carbs and sugar, now spent her days happily stirring fruit preserves, her hands often sticky, but her heart surprisingly light. She found a deep satisfaction in the tangible nature of her work, the process of turning simple ingredients into something delicious and desired. Her relationship with Lily and Tom had blossomed beyond her wildest expectations. She read bedtime stories to them, helped with homework, and even learned the words to all of Tom's favorite dinosaur songs. She discovered she was surprisingly good at making silly voices for story characters, and Lily's infectious giggles were far more rewarding than any standing ovation. With David, she found an easy camaraderie, a shared rhythm of daily life that felt profoundly grounding. They talked about the kids, about house repairs, about community events, conversations devoid of pretense, rich with simple connection. Emily, who had always craved privacy and solitude in her Hollywood life, now found herself actively seeking out these moments of connection, cherishing the feeling of belonging. Then, one afternoon, as Emily was sorting through old photo albums with Lily, a picture slid out, a candid shot of Sarah and David from their college days, holding hands and laughing. Behind them, partially obscured, was a familiar face, a handsome, dark-haired man with an intense gaze. Lily pointed. "Mommy, who's that?" "He looks like that actor who was in that superhero movie." Emily looked closer, and her breath hitched. It was Jake Miller, a rising Hollywood star with whom Emily Wickersham had a notoriously messy, highly publicized breakup 5 years ago. He was her first serious Hollywood boyfriend, and the media circus around their split had left her deeply scarred. The idea that Sarah Mitchell, her current body's original owner, might have known Jake sent a jolt of anxiety through her. The world suddenly felt a lot smaller and a lot more complicated. Just as this unsettling realization settled in, David walked through the door, a slightly anxious look on his face. "Honey, something unexpected came up," he said, holding up his phone. "Remember how I told you about my college reunion next month? Well, guess who's going to be the keynote speaker?" He paused, then sighed. "Jake Miller. He was my roommate back in the day. And he's bringing his +1. He apparently specifically asked if I was coming and if I was bringing Sarah." Emily's mind raced. Jake Miller. Here. At a college reunion. With David. And she, in Sarah's body, was expected to attend as Sarah. Her past was about to collide with Sarah's present, threatening to unravel the fragile, beautiful life she had built. The quiet charm of jam-making suddenly seemed a distant memory as the anxieties of her old Hollywood life, in the most unexpected of places, came roaring back. Sarah, in Emily's body, sat in stunned silence after refusing the multi-million-dollar reality show deal. Brenda had left in a huff, declaring Emily was either crazy or staging the most elaborate career suicide ever conceived. The silence of the vast Malibu mansion was deafening, amplified by Chloe's quiet, watchful presence. Chloe, still unconvinced by Sarah's self-discovery narrative, sensed a deeper turmoil. She said softly, approaching Sarah where she sat on the opulent sofa. "What's really going on? You're shutting everyone out. You're turning down opportunities you've dreamed of. You don't seem like the Emily I know. Is it about that guy?" Sarah looked up confused. "What guy?" Chloe sighed. "You know, Jake Miller. The one from your college days, before Hollywood swallowed you both whole. He messaged you a few weeks ago, remember? Asked if you still thought about the good old days? You blew him off. But ever since, you've been different." Sarah's mind raced. Jake Miller. Emily's ex. The one David knew. A terrifying realization began to dawn on her. She reached for Emily's phone and quickly searched her old messages. There it was, a recent message from a number she didn't recognize, but the name, Jake Miller, was saved under blocked contacts. The message read, "Emily, I know it's been years, but I saw you on TV the other day. You look incredible. I'm going to be in Richmond next month for a college reunion. Would love to catch up for old time's sake. My number is redacted." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Malibu air conditioning. Emily had been in touch with Jake Miller before the swap. And he was going to Richmond. To David's college reunion. With David. The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. Emily and David's college roommate, Jake Miller, had once been Emily's boyfriend. And now, in Sarah's body, Emily was about to face him. The carefully constructed narrative of Emily's glamorous, perfect life began to crumble, revealing cracks Sarah had never seen. This wasn't just a body swap, it was a tangled web of interconnected lives, a past Sarah had unwittingly stumbled into. The dream life suddenly felt less like a dream and more like a complicated, heartbreaking reality. Emily wasn't just a star, she was a woman with a past, with complicated relationships, with heartbreaks that were just as real as Sarah's own. The glitter had blinded Sarah to the very human struggles beneath. That evening, as Chloe prepared to leave, she pressed a worn, faded photograph into Sarah's hand. It was a picture of a younger Emily and Chloe, arms around their grandmother, all three beaming. "She would have loved this, knew you, Chloe said, her voice softer than Sarah had ever heard it. "She always told you to be true to yourself. Don't forget that." Sarah looked at the photograph, a lump forming in her throat. The genuine affection in Chloe's eyes, the love for her sister, made Sarah realize the depth of the deception she was perpetrating. She desperately wanted to go home, to her own life, to her own family, to the uncomplicated love of her husband and children. The yearning for her old life became an almost physical ache, eclipsing any lingering fascination with Hollywood. She had seen the other side, and while it sparkled, it was also profoundly lonely and fraught with its own complex sorrows. In Virginia, the announcement of Jake Miller as the keynote speaker at David's college reunion had sent a cold shockwave through Emily. Sarah's body, usually so unburdened by the anxieties of her former life, felt suddenly heavy with dread. David, oblivious to her inner turmoil, was excited. "Can you believe it, honey? Jake Miller. He's a huge star now. It'll be great to catch up. He always was a character. And I can't wait for you two to finally meet. I've told him so much about you, Sarah." Emily forced a smile, a practiced Hollywood smile that felt utterly out of place in Sarah's kind, unassuming face. "Oh yes. Wonderful. A pleasure, I'm sure." The days leading up to the reunion were a blur of internal panic. Emily, who had meticulously managed her public image for years, was now terrified of a single, intimate encounter. What if Jake recognized her? Not physically, of course, but what if he saw something in her eyes, a flicker of the old Emily? What if he brought up their past? What if he somehow realized this wasn't Sarah? The thought sent shivers down her spine. She spent hours practicing Sarah's mannerisms, her slightly self-deprecating humor, her way of listening attentively. She even started trying to mimic Sarah's handwriting, leaving little notes for herself around the house, reminding her of key Sarah facts. The night of the reunion arrived. Emily, dressed in a simple but elegant dress Sarah owned, felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She walked into the bustling banquet hall on David's arm, an unsettling sense of déjà vu washing over her. The room was filled with faces she didn't know, yet the atmosphere, the buzz of conversation, the clinking of glasses, reminded her so much of the glitzy events she frequented as Emily Wickersham. She clutched David's hand tightly, grounding herself in the warmth of his presence. He introduced her to his old college friends, and Emily, surprisingly, found herself enjoying the genuine warmth and laughter. These weren't people trying to get something from her, they were just enjoying each other's company, reminiscing about shared memories. Then she saw him. Jake Miller. He stood by the stage, impeccably dressed, handsome, with the undeniable charisma of a movie star. He laughed easily with a group of old friends, his eyes sparkling. Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was the man who had broken her heart, the first love who had also been her first major Hollywood heartbreak. As if sensing her gaze, Jake turned, and his eyes met hers across the crowded room. For a split second, something flickered in his eyes, a flash of recognition, or perhaps just polite curiosity. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that sent a jolt through Emily. He began to make his way towards them. David, beaming, greeted his old roommate with a hearty slap on the back. "Jake, it's been too long, old man. Still charming the pants off everyone I see." He turned to Emily. "And Jake, this is my wonderful wife, Sarah. Sarah, this is Jake Miller, my college roommate." Emily extended Sarah's hand, her heart pounding. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Jake," she managed, her voice a little too soft. Jake took her hand, his grip warm and firm. He looked into Sarah's eyes, Emily's eyes, with an intense, searching gaze. "Sarah," he said, his voice deep and smooth, a voice that had once whispered sweet nothings in Emily's ear. "David has told me so much about you. And I have to say, you're even more radiant than he described." He paused, his gaze lingering. "You know," he continued, a faint, almost imperceptible frown creasing his brow, "there's something incredibly familiar about you. Have we met before?" Emily's breath hitched. Had he recognized her? Was this the moment everything unraveled? She searched for a response, her mind racing. David, oblivious, interjected with a laugh. "Oh, Jake, you always did have a way with the ladies." "No, Sarah and Emily Wickersham are just two very different people." Though funnily enough, Sarah has developed quite a passion for jam making lately, while Emily Wickersham is currently reinventing herself as the lentil soup queen of Hollywood. Jake's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise in them. "Emily Wickersham," he repeated, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Well, that is a coincidence." "But no, David, I was talking about Sarah here. Truly. It's like I know you from somewhere." Emily managed a nervous laugh, pulling her hand away. "I assure you, Jake, we haven't. But I've certainly heard a lot about you." The air crackled with unspoken tension, a past threatening to collide with an present, all wrapped up in two mismatched bodies. The reunion had just become a minefield, and Emily felt utterly exposed. The encounter with Jake Miller at the college reunion had left Emily, in Sarah's body, shaken to her core. The fleeting look of recognition in his eyes, his insistence that she felt familiar, had been unnervingly close to exposing her. She spent the rest of the evening in a state of heightened anxiety, acutely aware of Jake's presence, even as David happily reminisced with his old friend. Jake, for his part, maintained a polite but lingering curiosity towards Sarah, occasionally catching her eye with a look that seemed to probe beyond the surface. Emily skillfully deflected his attempts to engage in deeper conversation, steering him back to college anecdotes and David's impressive career. It was a performance more demanding than any role she had ever played, and by the end of the night, she was utterly drained. Back home, as David slept soundly beside her, Emily lay awake, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. Jake's presence had been a visceral reminder of her past, of the Emily Wickersham who had once been so passionately in love and so publicly heartbroken. She realized, with a startling clarity, how much she had built walls around herself after that experience, retreating into the protected, manufactured world of celebrity. Meeting Jake again, not as the famous actress, but as Sarah, had stripped away those defenses. She saw him not as a tabloid headline, but as a man with warmth in his eyes, a genuine fondness for David, and a surprising lack of bitterness towards her, or what he thought was her. The encounter had forced her to confront her own emotional baggage, the scars of her past that she had buried under layers of fame and sophistication. But amidst the lingering anxiety, something profound shifted. As she watched David sleep, his breathing even and peaceful, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This man, Sarah's husband, was kind, steady, and utterly devoted. He loved Sarah unconditionally, a love that was rooted in shared life, not public image. She thought of Lily and Tom, their uninhibited hugs, their innocent laughter, their unquestioning love for Mommy. She realized that in this ordinary life, she had found a depth of connection and a sense of genuine belonging that had been utterly absent from her glamorous existence. The fear of exposure still gnawed at her, but it was now overshadowed by a powerful longing to keep this feeling, to cherish these relationships. She didn't want to be Emily Wickersham anymore. She wanted to be Sarah Mitchell, the woman who created beautiful jams, nurtured her family, and was loved for simply being herself. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. Across the country, in the sterile luxury of Emily's Malibu mansion, Sarah was also grappling with the true cost of the dream life. Chloe's visit had ended with a heartfelt, if still slightly suspicious, hug, but it had left Sarah with a deeper understanding of Emily's loneliness. She saw the vast, empty mansion not as a symbol of success, but as a gilded cage. The constant demands of the industry, the endless performance, the lack of genuine connection, the fabricated controversies, it all painted a picture of a life that was far more taxing and isolating than Sarah had ever imagined. Emily might have fame and fortune, but she was missing the rich tapestry of everyday life, the warmth of an uncomplicated hug, the joy of a shared, ordinary meal. The thought of the reality show offer, which Brenda was still pushing relentlessly, now filled Sarah with a renewed sense of dread. She couldn't endure the constant scrutiny, the endless acting, the pressure to be Emily Wickersham for the rest of her life. She missed her children's messy kisses, David's gentle presence, the familiar scent of her own home. She missed making her own lentil soup, not as a defiant statement, but as a simple act of comfort. She picked up Emily's phone again, searching for more clues about Jake Miller. She found a series of older, unsent draft messages to him, dating back years, filled with heartfelt apologies and lingering questions about their breakup. Emily, the poised star, had clearly carried a torch for him, a hidden vulnerability beneath her polished exterior. Sarah realized that Emily, for all her outward strength, was just as human, just as fragile, and just as capable of heartbreak as anyone else. One quiet afternoon, while meditating in Emily's sprawling yoga studio, a room Sarah had initially found absurdly extravagant but now appreciated for its peaceful solitude, Sarah had an unexpected vision. It wasn't a dream, but a vivid, almost hallucinatory moment of clarity. She saw Emily in Sarah's body, laughing with Lily and Tom, her hands covered in flour, a smear of jam on her cheek. She saw Emily with David, sitting on a porch swing, simply talking, connected and at peace. And she saw herself in Emily's body, alone in the mansion, surrounded by beautiful things, but with a profound ache in her chest. The vision was so powerful, so emotionally resonant, that it brought tears to her eyes. She knew, with absolute certainty, that Emily was thriving in her life, finding a joy and authenticity she had never known. And she, Sarah, was utterly miserable trying to maintain the facade of Emily's life. The realization crystallized into a desperate, all-consuming desire. She needed to go home. She needed to be Sarah again. She missed the comfortable weight of her own body, the familiar cadence of her own voice, the scent of her own skin. She missed the woman she was, the mother, the wife, the friend. The glittering allure of Hollywood had faded, replaced by the profound, undeniable truth that her own ordinary life was, in fact, extraordinary. She picked up Emily's phone, intending to call Brenda and tell her, once and for all, that she was done. But then, a thought struck her, a peculiar instinct she couldn't explain. What if Emily felt the same? What if the only way back was for both of them to truly want it? She knew she couldn't simply demand it. The wish that had brought them here was born of a shared yearning, and perhaps the way back required a shared desire as well. A sense of hope, fragile yet persistent, flickered within her. She knew what she had to do. Emily, still in Sarah's body, sat on the porch swing of the Mitchell home, watching Lily and Tom chase fireflies in the twilight. David was inside, humming off-key as he washed the dinner dishes. The air was thick with the scent of blooming honeysuckle and the sweet chirping of crickets. It was a symphony of ordinary life, and it filled Emily with a profound, aching contentment. Her mind drifted back to Jake Miller at the reunion. He had left her a small, handwritten note, slipped into David's pocket. "Still think there's something about you, Sarah. Hope we meet again. Jake." It was innocent enough, but it underscored the delicate balance of her current deception. She thought of her own life, the one she had left behind. The endless demands, the superficial connections, the constant pressure to be perfect. The Malibu mansion now felt like a cold, empty mausoleum, a stark contrast to the vibrant, messy warmth of this home. Emily Wickersham, the star, had been lonely. Sarah Mitchell, the mom and jam maker, was surrounded by love. She now understood the true meaning of richness, not in wealth or fame, but in the everyday embraces, the shared laughter, the quiet comfort of being truly seen and loved for who you are. The desire to return to her own body was no longer about escaping this life, but about bringing the invaluable lessons she had learned back to her own life. She wanted to hug Chloe, really hug her, and tell her how much she loved her, truly appreciated her. She wanted to face her own past with honesty, armed with the newfound strength and emotional clarity she had gained. "I want to be Emily again," she whispered to the fireflies, her voice soft in Sarah's throat, "but I'll never forget a single moment of being Sarah." It wasn't a wish of escape, but a wish of integration, of carrying this newfound heart back to her true self. Thousands of miles away, Sarah, in Emily's body, stood on the vast, empty balcony of the Malibu mansion, gazing out at the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The glittering lights of the city below seemed cold and distant. Chloe had sent her a text, a photo of their grandmother with a caption, "Be true to yourself, Em. Always." It was a simple message, but it resonated deeply. Sarah thought of her own children, of David, of the warmth of her own bed, of the taste of her own lentil soup. The Hollywood dream, so vivid and alluring from afar, had revealed itself to be a demanding, lonely, and often soul-crushing reality. She had walked a red carpet, faced paparazzi, been called a genius by critics, but none of it compared to the feeling of her son's small hand in hers, or the sound of her daughter's sleepy "I love you, Mommy." She had seen the true Emily, a woman scarred by heartbreak, searching for connection, just as Sarah herself had been. The envy she once felt had transformed into a profound empathy. She understood now that everyone, no matter how glamorous their facade, carried their own burdens, their own silent struggles. Sarah knew, with every fiber of Emily's being, that she couldn't continue this charade. She needed to go home. She needed to be Sarah, the woman who was a good mother, a loving wife, a valued friend. The life she had once seen as mundane was, in fact, a precious, irreplaceable treasure. "I want to be Sarah again," she murmured, her voice resonating with Emily's accustomed power, "but I will never, ever forget what it was like to be Emily." Her wish, like Emily's, was not one of simple escape, but of a profound desire to return to herself, enriched by the journey. In that precise moment, as both women, separated by an entire continent, uttered their heartfelt, authentic wishes to return to their true selves, each infused with a new understanding and appreciation for the other's life, a phenomenon of incredible synchronicity occurred. A sudden, brilliant flash of lightning, impossibly vibrant and charged with an otherworldly energy, arced across the clear night sky above Malibu. Simultaneously, in the tranquil Virginia night, another bolt, equally brilliant and powerful, split the air above the Mitchell home, momentarily turning night into day. Neither bolt was accompanied by thunder. Instead, a peculiar, high-pitched hum vibrated through the air, like a celestial tuning fork. The world, for a fleeting instant, seemed to hold its breath. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished. In Malibu, Sarah blinked, her head spinning slightly. She found herself sitting not on the balcony overlooking the vast ocean, but in her own, familiar, slightly cluttered living room, on her worn sofa. The scent of herbal tea, not expensive perfume, was in the air. She scrambled to her feet, running to the nearest mirror. Staring back was Sarah Mitchell, her practical bob, her kind, tired eyes, her familiar smile. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and joy. "I'm home," she whispered, her own voice, and it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. In Virginia, Emily, still on the porch swing, felt a dizzying lurch, a sensation like her very soul was settling back into its rightful place. She looked down at her hands, long, slender fingers, perfectly manicured nails. She felt the familiar athletic tautness of her own body. She raced inside to the bathroom, flipping on the light. Staring back was Emily Wickersham, the glamorous actress, her blonde hair, her striking blue eyes, her sculpted cheekbones. A laugh, bright and clear and utterly Emily's, bubbled up from deep within her. "I'm back," she exclaimed, her voice husky and confident. She looked around the home, the familiar mess, the warmth, the feeling of love, and a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes, spread across her face. David, startled by Emily's sudden exclamation, came into the living room, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Honey, are you okay? You sound different. More like yourself." He looked at her, his eyes full of warmth. "And where's Tom? I was just about to read him a story." Emily, still grinning, threw her arms around him in a spontaneous, genuine hug. "I'm more than okay, David. I'm back. And I'm ready to read Tom a story." David, though slightly confused by her exuberance, hugged her back, feeling the comforting familiarity of his wife. The next morning, Emily, now back in her own body in Malibu, made a series of life-altering decisions. She called Brenda, not to accept the reality show, but to inform her she was taking a 6-month sabbatical from acting. "I need to reconnect, Brenda. With myself, with my family." Brenda, surprisingly, didn't argue. "Authenticity is in, Emily. A break will only make you more desirable." Emily also called Chloe, not with excuses, but with a heartfelt apology and an open invitation for a real, no-pretense visit. "I love you, sis," she said, genuinely, for the first time in years. Emily spent her sabbatical traveling, but also cooking, learning to make hearty, comforting meals, including lentil soup, and volunteering for children's literacy. She returned to acting with a renewed sense of purpose, her performances imbued with a depth and warmth she had never possessed before. She was still Emily Wickersham, the star, but now she was also Emily, the woman who knew the joy of ordinary life. Sarah, back in her Virginia home, found herself utterly transformed. The experience had ignited a spark of creativity and confidence she never knew she possessed. Inspired by her time in Emily's shoes, she started a blog, A Day in Emily's Shoes, Lessons from a Life Less Ordinary. She wrote with humor and candor about the challenges of Hollywood glamour, the true meaning of connection, and the unexpected beauty of everyday life. Her blog quickly went viral, attracting millions of readers who resonated with her honest, relatable voice. She became an accidental motivational speaker, inspiring women to appreciate their own lives, to find their own red carpet moments in the everyday. She even started selling Sarah's sweet spreads online, her artisanal jams becoming a symbol of her journey. Sarah and Emily, despite their dramatic return, kept in touch. They became unlikely confidants, their bond forged in the most extraordinary of circumstances. They would text each other, sharing stories and advice, a unique friendship born of a shared magical experience. And whenever a distant rumble of thunder echoed through the sky, or a flash of lightning illuminated their respective windows, they would text each other, a shared chuckle across the miles. "If we're going to swap again," Emily would text, followed by a laughing emoji, "let's make sure it's on a weekend, okay?" Sarah would reply instantly, "And definitely no more red carpets for me. Unless it's for the Best Lentil Soup Award." Both women, now firmly rooted in their own lives, understood the profound truth. They didn't need to live each other's lives, but they had needed to walk in each other's shoes to truly appreciate their own. Their wishes had been granted, not to steal a life, but to transform their own, proving that sometimes the greatest adventures lead you right back home.